Number one breakfast show in the country, morning at NTV. We have an inauguration or swearing-in ceremony that is coming your way on May 12th. That is Thursday next week. You have UPDF, the Uganda People's Defense Forces, that they have come out with verified information that seems to indicate that there are some unscrupulous individuals that plan to disrupt the inauguration that is on May 12th, when President Museveni is actually swearing in. They contend that these individuals are saying President Museveni will not be sworn in, but then that's why you've been seeing an uptick in the deployment of security forces. You've been seeing jets roaming around the city. All that is in preparation for the inauguration or swearing-in ceremony on May 12th. But that's not the only conversation we're going to be having right now. Umeme's 20-year concession is also coming to an end. President Museveni is up in arms. We'd like to hear the party position and more on that. Also, the speakership race within the NRM. We do not know whether the party position is to back Rebecca Kadaga, the Speaker of Parliament, or Jacob Oulanyah, the Deputy Speaker of Parliament. We thought in Chankwanzi, during the 3-week stint that they stayed there, they would be able to come out with a position, whether or not to front Oulanyah or Rebecca Kadaga. But up to now, we do not know. Even yesterday, a communique came out actually allowing or asking individuals to front applications for the same. But then government also, or the party, disowned that communique. We shall also talk about NOPE and the FDC. There have been some talks on how to harmonize the relationship between these two opposition parties when they kickstart the 11th Parliament. But then the meeting yesterday was postponed, so we want to know more about that. Yes, the show is morning at NTV. Emmanuel Dombo, the NRM Communications Director, is here. He's not alone. We also have the Executive Director of the ED, Center for Constitutional Governance, Sarah Birete. Ladies and gentlemen, many thanks for joining us on Morning at NTV.
Thank you and good morning, listeners, and it's a pleasure for me to be back here.
Indeed. Emmanuel Dombo, let's kick off with the plans for the inauguration on May 12th. How are they coming along?
You see, the inauguration of a president, for us as a party, we did our biggest part and we canvassed for votes.
Yeah.
And now the nation has taken over. There is a National Organizing Committee under the Office of the President, which is in very high gear in the preparations for this occasion. And they have already given a briefing, because yesterday I saw Honorable Mbayo on TV briefing the country how many guests have so far confirmed, heads of state.
21 presidents.
21 presidents, and that's no mean achievement.
Indeed.
That just shows you how respectable the leader in the region and in the country and in the world is, and how others regard of him. So to us, we are in upbeat to ensure that what was started is concluded, so that the new mandate is demonstrated and the president starts delivering on his promises.
And of course, the numeracy in the number of heads of state who are going to be in attendance dispels the conversation or argument from the opposition that that President Museveni doesn't enjoy support within the region or the whole world.
But that is what the opposition has always said. Because when they are behaving like co-wives, there is no co-wife who will go and praise the other when they are competing for the same, especially when they have just been defeated. Because ordinarily they want to say that, but when you look at Uganda and the influence Uganda has in the region, and it is now becoming a center for strategic security, in not only in the region, but in the whole of Africa. And the kingpin who is ensuring that this happens is President Yoweri Museveni. That's why we thought that if anybody wanted to replace President Museveni anyhow with this a lot of goodwill, it just doesn't happen like that.
Go ahead.
So the arrangements are on. The date has been set, and I think we shall be in Kololo, as we have always been. And the National Organizing Committee will be coming up with SOPs. The police will be coming up to guide on the security.
Indeed.
On how it should be. But also to call on Ugandans is that this is something that happens. It is celebrating our democratic process. There could have been a few issues during the elections, because these elections were unprecedented.
Indeed.
You know, because of the COVID pandemic that we were having, and you know that many countries that did not heed what Uganda did are right now paying a very heavy price because of this second wave which is coming in. We just pray that even as we prepare for swearing in, we are not hit by the second wave. we must be on the watch out as the vaccination also continues to ensure that we protect our people.
Away from the health concerns pertaining to COVID-19, there's also a security problem that UPDF is talking about. Unscrupulous individuals or saboteurs who plan to disrupt the inauguration ceremony on May 12th. They say President Museveni will not be swearing in no matter what. They plan to stage demonstrations in that regard. How is the party reacting to this news?
The guarantor of security in the country is the police of Uganda.
Indeed.
All of us, whether it's the opposition or it is the NRM, whenever there is any security situation, we report the police of Uganda. But also us at the party headquarters, we received information that there were individuals who are planning to use NRM t-shirts and they get up as if to go and demonstrate against the party because of some unfulfilled pledges. But in so doing, they wanted to camouflage so that they used the NRM t-shirts in order to hoodwink the public, when actually, for them, they will be having their own machinations.
Yes.
But I know the police is above the game. When you see how they handled the election process, how people were able to go and vote without much incident, we believe that even during this swearing-in exercise, we should be able to overcome it without major ado. But the security, including the Inspector General of Police and the CDF, and all the other security agencies in the country, will be coming up formally to guide the nation on how we must respond. And let me hope that people respond on what they have been advised and how they should, the role they should play.
All right, let's also bring in the perspective of civil society. We have the Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance. The Executive Director is Sarah Birete. She's with us here. Sarah, security compounds a big threat, and it pertains to individuals who want to disrupt the inauguration ceremony. Do you think this is verified information or justification from security apparatus to deploy heavily ahead of the inauguration process?
Well, I think our security in the country really has capacity to ensure that the national functions go on as planned. So as a citizen, I want to be comfortable knowing that the people in charge of safeguarding all of us as citizens of this country and national assets as well as national functions are up to the task and will do their work. I don't know the truth or the weight of what the allegations are, but I think, as Honorable Dombo has hinted, if at all it's true, then I think the IGP should address the country and advise them on how to do, including mentioning, because it's not enough, I think, to just mention that there are elements planning to do ABC. It would be also prudent to mention those elements and maybe apprehend them, because security is a common good. Yeah.
Yeah,
you know, making just allegations is really not enough. And we've seen several, allegations, including attacks on us as a sector, saying we fund terrorism. And then you don't see anything tangible in that line. So I think that aspect is very unfortunate.
Largely, what do you make of the political atmosphere in the run-up to the inauguration on May 12th? Is it a tense atmosphere or otherwise?
Well, I think many Ugandans largely are not necessarily paying attention to the swearing in. It's more of a party function than a national function. And that, of course, is not a good sign for our country. So NRM is busy, yes, preparing for swearing in, but you don't see other people outside NRM getting concerned or excited about this swearing in. So I think, to me, that observation is not good, because the swearing in ceremony for a president and new government should be a national function as compared to a party function. Yeah.
All right, Emmanuel Dombo, let's talk about the party's position when it comes to selection of a speaker in the process. We expected when you were in Chankwanzi for those 3 weeks that the party position would be maybe let's go for the deputy Olanye or the speaker Rebecca Kadaga, but still up to now there is uncertainty. What exactly is happening?
Why did you have to speculate what would happen when you were in Chankwanzi? Because
we spoke before you left, and you told me when you return, it will be known by the country whether Olanye or Rebecca.
Going to Chankwanzi had a specific purpose, and there was a program drawn.
Indeed.
And we told the press that discussion about the election of the speaker is not going to be part of the agenda of Chankwa's. And we had a very good, meaningful retreat.
All right.
And the people liked it. So, but we believe as we do the run-up to the election, I mean the swearing in of the president and swearing in of members of parliament, the immediate next business after swearing in will be election of the speaker. And I believe the leadership of the party must be doing consultations on how best this one must be handled. Yesterday, there was a tweet which came out from, you know, the media right now is moving so fast. Everybody in the media, people see something, they tweet, even before you have verified.
We are in a digital era.
Because before you have verified, everybody is struggling for a scoop. And especially about the election of the speaker. Everybody is asking, you just don't know how many calls I receive every day. Can you whisper something? Can you say something? Everybody wants to be the one to break the news. And this time it was from my side of the story, when one of our Twitter handles also peeping somewhere and seeing something, then he tweeted to say that people have been asked to pick their papers. When we did the verification, only to see that it wasn't very true. But what is true is that the Electoral Commission of the NRM is in the advanced stages on setting up guidelines for the election of the speakers, right from the Speaker of the Nation, National Speaker, district and city speakers, and also other lower council speakers. Supposing it comes to that, how is the party going to address it? So that when the Central Executive Committee comes up, you don't again have to say we are going to do this, and then you direct the Electoral Commission to begin doing that. They are consulting the lawyers to come up with proposals. So once we are in the meeting, which it may be soon, then a decision will be taken based on the information that is available. But the other organs of the party, like the Electoral Commission, like I've said, are in very advanced stages in coming up with guidelines. The lawyers are advising. But this is guidelines to conduct the elections should it be required for all the speakers, starting from the national speaker, city speakers, district speakers, and all the other lower council speakers.
All right, so let's talk about the hesitancy by the NRM top organs when it comes to choosing or backing a particular candidate in this speakership race. What do you make about the trouble in Paradise?
Well, I think first of all, and the admission of Honorable Dombo, the party has no guidelines on the race of the speaker. But we know that the rules of parliament, really the speakership race should be about parliament.
Indeed.
The rules of parliament under Rule 5, you know, it lays out how the elections of the speaker should be conducted. So other than a party fronting their own people they favor, a parliamentary race is the business of MPs.
Indeed.
The MPs, and in a non-partisan manner, the MPs should choose. Every MP qualifies to be a speaker. So the MPs should choose on who they think can lead them best in a neutral manner. It shouldn't even be about the party. You know, speakership, the first high, you know, qualification should be neutrality and impartiality in chairing the speaker, the house. But when you target so much onto a party, it's as if we are going to elect an NRM speaker. Yet this is a National Assembly. So I think to some extent, as much as the party can guide, and previously they've tried to guide, but they should let the MPs choose their speaker. I mean, really, that is really a different arm of government that should be left to function in an independent manner. And that's what the Constitution demands under the doctrine of separation of powers.
Right now, what do you make of the fight or the contestation between Jacob Oulanyah and Rebecca Kadaga? You have Oulanyah, who was saying Rebecca Kadaga had agreed to step down after the end of her tenure. Now the same person is saying, well, I'm going to continue with the mandate regardless of regardless of what I had promised at the end of my term in the previous, was it the 9th Parliament? Yes. So she said she was going to step down. She talked to the Central Executive Committee, and they promised that this was going to be her last tenure, but then she has continued. So where does that leave Jacob Oulanyah? What do you make of all this convolution?
No. I want to refer to the so-called Kadaga's promise as really bad talk. And even, it is very unfortunate that they are tagging it to SEC. What has the chair of SEC been saying all along? After 4 years, he said, I will rule this country for only 4 years. I will step down in 2006. I will step down when I can't rule beyond 75. Isn't he still there? So I don't think SEC is a good precedent to use in regards to bar talk and bar premises. We do not have any term limits on the tenure of the speakership, and neither do we have any term limits on the presidents and whatever. All safeguards were removed. So I think NRM would be the last party to try to call people out on their word in as far as keeping office, because they have let down this country all through. I don't know how many promises, because I will rule this country for 4 years. I will rule until 2006. I can't lift term limits. I can't rule beyond 75 because at that time you are weak. So there is a scientific reason. But where are we today? And we're going to swear in for the 7th time, making 40 years. So I think NRM should be the last people to call out Kadaga on such a premise if authority was made. They have no more authority.
Emmanuel Dombo, what do you make of this? It seems like it compounds more on the weaknesses within the NRM top organs. That's according to civil society, that the Central Executive Committee has failed to bring Kadaga to order, meaning there is some problem within the Central Executive Committee. Weaknesses within those structures.
There is no disorder at all.
Yes.
And I want people to know that the only apparent semblance of a disorder when it was trying to emerge.
Yes.
You know how the chairman of the party prevailed. Because what is most disheartening is that this is a highly reputable office where you need somebody who is highly reputed.
Yes.
And it's not an office that you'd want somebody to ascend to when he has been mad in a lot of bad exchange of bad words with some other people. And you know, when this was emerging, the chairman called the people who are involved and he prevailed to say the campaigns should stop and this media talk. And once that one ceased, there hasn't been any semblance of disorder. I want to tell you that NRM is highly organized and prepared. And it's going to prevail over this. Because at times the media gets their own speculation of failure to get what they wanted, and they begin provoking the NRM people to say what they shouldn't have said, even when the procedures are very clear. Under multi-party dispensation, and this is how things work, Madam Berete, even when we must get a neutral speaker. I want to tell you that there is nothing like a neutral speaker, by the way. Because there is an NRM government that has been elected with a specific mandate to do work. And the rules of procedure say government business shall take precedence. So, in a situation where already the rules have ironed out to say government business will take precedence over any other business, and government's business is the business which government promised the people of Uganda in the manifesto. That's how the rules of procedure are building the case in order. So, when you are going to an election of a speaker, you are going to elect a speaker who will ensure, one, that there is coherence and work of government, and two, to ensure that the government business which takes precedence is given the opportunity and priority to ensure that the people are served, because the government has been put there for the service of the people. So the speculation by the media is purely speculation. I want to tell you that in the background, there are consultations taking place. And once it becomes obvious that the people should know the outcome of those consultations, then we shall use our formal venues to say. One thing I didn't want to say, because I don't have a copy of the minutes of the SEC meeting that occurred, which she's referring to. Neither does she have. Neither does she have.
I called it battle.
Yes, Mr. Dombo.
Neither does she have anything. So really, it becomes ridiculous of me to come here, because that's not the method of our work, that I'll come here to begin discussing the business of the Central Executive Committee in a TV show. I know that there has been an attempt in the past by some members of who were in that meeting when they were in Parliament to raise up issues that should have been discussed. But now that, given that they were disputed by one of the members who was in that meeting, I don't want to delve into that, because even at that time, the Right Honorable Vice Chairman Alhaji Moses Chigongo called it the Riot Act. He reminded the leaders of their obligations under the National Code of Conduct, under the Leadership Code of Conduct for NRM, to say there are things that we say in specific forums. And if we don't do that, then you create disharmony. Because you get leaders, each one saying whatever he wants, and almost at the risk of divulging things that shouldn't be divulged, which are discussed in specific meetings. So, I know the chairman of the party is going to give guidance on this matter. If it becomes imminent that we go in for elections through the caucus, then that will happen. If there is consensus amongst the people who are contending and they agree on how best can be done, so that they save us that hullabaloo, then even that one will be communicated. But a decision will be done.
All right. Sada Birete, is it possible to achieve transparency and accountability with the way Parliament executes its mandate if you have a speaker who is partisan or aligned to a particular party?
Well, I think at the moment our laws have a lacuna on actual independence of the different arms of government. We have also seen, chief justices who call themselves party cadres. So that there is a gap in the laws. And we hope that as we continue to improve on our constitutionalism, both in policy and practice, we can specify to the extent of even getting an independent speaker who is not even an MP. Because some countries have advanced to that level where there are qualifications for a speaker, there is an independent entity, and the speaker does not have to be an MP. So that saves them from even being a party leader and the whole disadvantages of carrying the party baggage into the chair of a speaker as an independent arm of government.
But is it feasible to paint the same picture in our own parliament in Uganda?
No, I've said even the laws themselves have a gap. So there is no, even the laws have a gap. But what is expected? And we have had several, speakers. I think the most remarkable as Right Honorable Apakaburo, may he rest in peace. As much as he was a senior leader of NRM, but he would steer the House with the neutrality and objectivity. And nobody can ever question
I intend
his
to seek
legacy
for
as a
his
speaker.
son to talk about his legacy, the legacy of Wapakabulo. Very good morning to Wapakabulo, the son of the former speaker. Yes, he shall be making his way on morning at NTV. We shall look for you to talk about this and more. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think once we advance in our constitutionalism, we shall reach that level. But it's assumed that people, so they're all assumed that people who occupy that space have the caliber and magnanimity of the likes of the late Wapakaburo, which is not usually the case.
But Mr. Busiku, where are you going to get those neutral people in Uganda?
Okay.
Because
Was Wapakaburo Ugandan?
because the people who vote, I had an opportunity to sit in the parliament presided over by Right Honorable Wapakaburo.
How do you rate
And
his
he
legacy?
was a very interesting
His son is a strong NRM cadre.
He was a very interesting guy. I one time traveled with him for a whole month out of the country, and went through Zimbabwe for a CPA meeting, went for a constitutional governance meeting in South Africa, and ended up in Tanzania for the speakers conference. And during that time, I did interact with him and try to find out how he conducts his business. But one of the things he told me, let me just mention it here. He said it will depend on where you want the decision to go. He said you can kill a government or opposition side's desire without being seen doing so. He said, for instance, if he wanted a government side to win in an argument which is they are going to vote, he would begin with the opposition side so that they give their views. So that by the time you build the momentum to vote, the last people to vote to speak for are from government. And that one, it will take tact and intelligence and for you and magnanimity to say that. And I found that very interesting that to him, he chose to do that, that if he wanted the opposition had something very interesting between the Kule Parks, Ben Watchers and the kind, at that time, he would begin with the Mamanya Mushegas. He would begin with the Area Kategas, the firebrand of NRM. And then he ends with the opposition, so that the momentum towards the decision is done. Then by the time he puts a question, the prevailing tone in the House is the one dominated by the people who have debated last. That was so interesting.
But the biggest contestation...
But he would also give everybody time.
Mr. Doe, the biggest contestation right now pertains to the fact that whether or not a partisan speaker can front national interests in parliament that do not largely align with that particular person's party.
But would you see any party that is pursuing interests other than national interests? Because the NRM, even when it is partisan, it went to the nation and was elected after it has put its agenda before the people of Uganda, and it was elected. So even when NRM is pursuing what you presumably you'd want to call a partisan interest, it is a partisan interest that has been tested through a manifesto. Indeed. And the question has been put to the people of Uganda. So NRM is pursuing a partisan interest in order to serve a national interest. What would be wrong with that?
It seems like... It seems like even the opposition political parties are also having a hard time. And you have FDC, Forum for Democratic Change. The National Unity Platform Party is also grappling, and they've failed to front a single candidate to take on either Olanya or Rebecca Kadaga for this top position. What do you make of this? Because we had anticipated by now, opposition should be a united front against the NRM speaker or candidate whom SEC shall be backing anytime soon. So what do you make of this? They failed in the election to come with a single candidate. They failed during the speakership race to also harmonize and come up with a single candidate. Patrick Amuriat Obo is fronting a different person. Samu Junganda is saying, no, that is not the party position. What do you make of all this?
Well, I think it's important to underscore the fact that the opposition have not yet generated consensus on a number of issues, including in the period before elections. They are faced with a tyrant of numbers. I think NUP has 61 MPs. Yes, so 61 MPs versus 250, and I must have 300.
Some 390.
300 and about, yes. So it's numbers are against them, first of all. But secondly, I saw attempts, letters written by the NUP president to try to reach out to his fellow opposition leaders to try to generate a minimum common agenda for the 5 years. And FDC, I think, said they need to postpone the meeting. I think that it's high time the opposition knew that they need to stand above their individual interests and front a common position of the people who did not vote for President Museveni. And we know they are above 3.5 million because Bobi Wine alone officially, we might never know the actual quantification of how Ugandans vote, given that even the petition in Supreme Court did not succeed. But what the Electoral Commission announced, we know that at least Bobi Wine got 3.5 million votes, and other candidates also got some votes. So you have these Ugandans who should also be represented in a national agenda. Under multi-party dispensation, for example, under the Public Finance Management Act, the Minister of Finance is supposed to present a charter on fiscal responsibility in the first 3 months of the new parliament. The new parliament will be sworn in on 20th May. We hope that by August 20th, whoever will be the Minister of Finance will present a charter for fiscal responsibility. We are grappling with a debt crisis in this country.
65 trillion.
Yes, we are grappling with a bloated administrative budget thanks to NRM, which even created new administrative structures amidst COVID and the impact of COVID on the economy. We have a budget that is beyond our means. We can only generate a maximum of 22 trillion. We have a budget of 44 trillion. So that is more than 50% deficit budget. We have a debt trillion at 65 trillion, a public debt at 65 trillion. And our debt indicator level is 47.2% of GDP. We are in a red line economically. So we expect that as soon as the budget is read, the opposition is able to read an alternative budget. Because that's how multi-party dispensation works. We hope that when the Minister of Finance, by 20th August, presents a charter on fiscal responsibility, and I wish citizens could pay attention to the fiscal responsibility, given that we are riding into a debt crisis as a nation. The fiscal responsibility, according to NRM, opposition should present an alternative fiscal responsibility for this country. These are key issues that opposition must get their act together, work together, get a think tank, and be able to move to check the excesses of this government.
Of course, you talked about the administrative units, but government says that this is geared towards extending more services to the people in this country, creation of urbanization, which will spur economic growth and employment. That's what government contends with the creation of administrative units. Don't you think this is a good move?
You see, you don't need an LC5 chairman to build a hospital in my area and put doctors and equipment and medicine. It does not need an LC5 chairman. You don't need an LC5 chairman to repair roads or the crisis of roads in Kampala. You don't need, that is the most extreme excuse that the government uses to front the elaborate patronage by creating simple jobs for political, for the political class and leave the majority, languishing in poverty. You do not need, a Minister of Health can plan hospitals. And work with existing, however big. I used to, my district was later cut, Bushenyi, cut into 5 more districts. Bushenyi was more important and more developmental when it was bigger. So that excuse to say that this area has this number of coverage, we can't extend services, is the most extreme excuse any government or leadership can advance.
Emmanuel Dombo, let's talk about the...
Because, maybe to conclude, these administrative units take away the resource envelope that should serve the people.
Emmanuel Dombo...
But
yes.
Whereas I want to partially agree with my friend with her view, I want to tell her that she has never been president. And she doesn't know the challenges of being a president. Just look at the opposition. Just developing a consensus, a minimum consensus amongst them is becoming this problematic. Now, to create a national consensus of people who have so many small tribes and they are fighting in their respective regional areas becomes a big challenge. And that might be destructive. That is why in some situations like in Bukedi, I come from Bukedi, where my people of Bunyole belonged to Tororo district, and the only language you could use to communicate was English in the district council. Because each tribe is independent of the other, and were brought together by colonialists under a district called Bukedi, and people could only speak either in Luganda during the colonial days in council, or English. And one time I was in the council, but people could hardly communicate a meaningful dialogue that was supposed to be. So, because of these historical distortions and challenges, the president, whoever president would be, must deal with them as we process and we lay a foundation in order to do what Madam Birete is saying. That we shall reach there and plan and do hospitals. But when people are quarreling, because of tribe, because of sharing,
has never got a district.
Because of the same challenges. You see how difficult it has been. Can a civil society be at the forefront of resolving such a problem? Perhaps when you create a small unit of administration, the people would cool down so that now they can begin talking about administration, about development, and some other issues of governance. But that's a challenge of leadership that gets, other than the civil society, which only works on the constitution, a paycheck, and this, and then life continues as if there is no problem at all.
Sarah Birete.
We don't just work on the paycheck, Honorable Dombo. We are actually civil society, are think tanks in this country.
Yeah, you see, for them, they think in English.
All right.
That's the good thing.
All right, Sarah Birete. Sarah Birete and Emmanuel Dombo. Let's talk about the Umeme concessions that are also causing so many people to talk. Welcome back and many thanks for staying with us on the #1 breakfast show in the country, Morning at NTV. I still have Emmanuel Dombo, the Director Communications at the NRM Secretariat. I also have Sarah Birete, the Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance. Gentlemen and lady, very good morning once again. Let's continue with this conversation, starting with you, Mr. Dombo. Museveni is up in arms. He's saying Umeme's concession, it's coming to an end. It's expiring in 2025, and Umeme is not performing. Power tariffs are so high. What do you make of this?
I think we cannot fully understand the Umeme story until we understand how Umeme came in being. Even before we talk about how the concession ends. Because I know about 25 years ago, about 30 years ago, I don't remember specifically there, government took a decision to disband UEB. And when the government disbanded UEB, they formed the 3 successor companies. Generation, transmission, and distribution. And each of these became independent companies. One of the effects of this decision was that UEB, which had one single managing director, now you had 3 successor companies, each with its own structure of administration.
Yes.
Therefore causing the administrative costs already to go high. But also secondly, at that time, I think because of poverty and poor revenue, government was badging a lot to the Bretton Woods institutions, which were giving us credit, and were pushing a lot of structural adjustment programs and demanding of government to take certain reforms in order to qualify for PECs from those institutions. So, when the decision was taken that now let us get out of UEB, the successor companies were formed. One of the companies was distribution, and apparently the one which looked, I think, most lucrative in the game of concessioning, and then Umeme, which the first managing director I remember of Umeme is a person who had been here working with UEB, and he just changed from within the system, and he took over. So the concession has been running for a number of years, but with those inbuilt administrative costs which came up because of the disbundling, and that created the tariff to go high. Then secondly, Umeme, I know Umeme must have been given targets in the contract.
Indeed.
Because I didn't, I wish I'd known that I was going to discuss Umeme, I would have looked through the historical records. They had targets which they had to achieve. They had to reduce the energy losses by a certain percentage. They had to ensure a number of connections within the country. And also to ensure that there is energy efficiency within the country. One of the things they achieved is that a lot of efficiency must have been attained. I don't know whether the energy loss, they have worked hard to ensure that the energy loss is reduced.
Actually, the losses have been so paramount. Between January and March this very year, they lost 98 billion shillings in one area, that is the Ginger sub-region. 98 billion shillings. Should we talk about letting this concession expire in 2025 and giving the mandate to another company or government taking over the responsibility?
Could be that's a decision that the government can take a decision after well thought out studies and evaluation, because they must have been witnessing what Umeme is doing and also evaluating what Umeme is doing and finding out can't Ugandans. By the way, Umeme did not bring in so many people from abroad. They are using the same Ugandans who have been here working in the previous companies, but because of the concessioning agreement, they had to come in and participate and bring in their expertise. I don't know whether their expertise, if the concession is not renewed, whether the government would be seriously disadvantaged. Now it is the Umeme themselves to begin arguing their case to find out how have they contributed towards the process of power distribution, and how has their being in the process disadvantaged us. The president came out vehemently the other day to say the concession has increased the costs of electricity.
Indeed.
Yes,
Sarah Birete, what do you make of
and
it?
the question is, how do we cut down that? And whether, if we didn't renew the concession, whether Uganda as a government is prepared to take over the management of the distribution. Because previously, we are doing it. Honorable Muloni was the managing director of the, I think, of the distribution company in Uganda. and the same people are still around. Could be they can go back and do their jobs.
I think the president is watching Morning at NTV and he has taken note of those insights, Emmanuel Dombo. All right, Sarah Birete, go ahead. What do you make of this? Umeme is losing money. Should we talk about another company taking over upon expiry of the concession in 2025, or can government actually take on this responsibility?
You know, before we even go to the expiry of the concession, in 2013, Parliament did an audit on the performance of Umeme and whether there was value for money for a taxpayer. And Parliament established that indeed Umeme gave a raw deal to citizens and passed the resolution on 21st November 2013 advising government to terminate the contract of Umeme. The executive blocked that resolution. So the other day I was shocked on Labor Day to see the president saying that people passed behind his back and he did not know that Umeme would increase the cost of consumption of electricity to a taxpayer and so many other things. I think it is really shocking. And maybe people who work on the president's speeches and preparation, they need to remind him of historical milestones, like a decision of Parliament, doing an evaluation and recommending termination of Umeme contract and clearly quantifying losses. This decision was ignored by the executive, which is chaired by the same president. So I think we don't need to do another evaluation. The writing is on the wall. We all know that we pay highly for power that we consume, and this has limited consumption. As much as we talk of generating excessive and enough electricity, but who consumes it? And then we have environmental degradation, the disappearing cover forests in this country, because everybody has resorted to charcoal. We have few people that can afford gas and other modernized energy products for cooking and home use. So I think if anybody needs an evaluation on this, amidst a climate change crisis, amidst the debt burden and economic crisis, amidst an evaluation confirming that a taxpayer got a raw deal in Umeme contract, I just think that they should consider themselves lucky if they conclude their contract. And maybe if government does not act, then citizens should act.
In what manner? How can citizens act, Sarah Birete?
No. You see, in accountable leadership and in a democracy, leaders are supposed to do what citizens want. Citizens can stage a boycott of Umeme and many other acts of civil disobedience against Umeme. Citizens can act in a democracy. But of course, our contestation, also our question is, do we have a democracy? Then because if you have, we know citizens stopped the giver of Mavira. Citizens can stop Umeme if they choose to.
All right, amazing insights have been shared right here on Morning at NTV. Emmanuel Dombo, the NRM Director for Communications at the NRM Secretariat. Sarah Birete, the Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance. We've been talking about what was been happening within the National Unity Platform Party, the Forum for Democratic Change Party, what they've been discussing and why they haven't come to a single coalition of speakership to take on whomever the NRM party is going to be backing. Let me just get some of your last parting shots, Emmanuel Dombo and Sarah Birete, in 2 minutes. And we wrap up. Emmanuel.
Well,
ahead of inauguration.
To us, ahead of the inauguration, we want to call on the people of Uganda that the election process, which all of us participated in, is going to be capped up with the swearing in of the president, so that we confirm his mandate to give him an opportunity to implement what he promised the people of Uganda. We call on the people of Uganda to be peaceful. There could have been challenges during the election process.
Indeed.
This can only be resolved by people talking to one another.
Indeed.
You have seen the opposition failing to agree because they are writing to one another. Ugandans prefer letters and they respect letters. But what brings people together is when there is a meeting of hearts. Let people meet one another and talk. And in the background, when the wise men of Uganda, the civil society, the religious leaders, let us encourage the dialogue that must bring this country to the beauty that should be. We wish everybody well and wish you good celebrations for the swearing in.
Amazing. 4,000 people expected. 21 heads of state have already confirmed. We expect 42. Now, Sarah Birete, your last parting shots to the citizens of this country ahead of inauguration.
Well, Democratization is a process. It does not start or end with elections. It's a continuous process of nation building. I call upon citizens, regardless of which leader they support, to demand for accountable leadership in this country, to watch and ensure that there is the leadership decisions respect the views, aspirations, and wishes of the people, and ensure that in all decisions, especially as the country slides into a debt crisis and economic crisis, to ensure that the decisions made, budgetary decisions and other political decisions, are made in the interest of the common good and in the interest of the taxpayer, to ensure that we stop political wastage and hemorrhage of money in this country.
And on that note, we've come to the end of Morning at NTV. My name is Romy Busiko. Of course, I've had Emmanuel Dombo, the NRM Director for Communications at the NRM Secretariat, and also Sara Birete, the Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance. Matthias